So first of all, we're going to start with some general information. So I'm sure a lot of you have been on many webinars and you know where the chat box is, but just so I can orient you. So at the bottom of your screen, you will see a ruler and there will be a point there where it says chat. So go ahead and locate that chat icon and start and write hi, hello, what's your name, your business name, just so we can see that that you know where it is and we can communicate back and forth. All right, good. So I'm getting some chats here. Fantastic. The next button next to it is the Q&A button. So that's where, if you have any questions throughout our presentation, go ahead and put it in that, press that button and put in your questions. This is an interactive webinar. So throughout the webinar, we're going to ask you questions. We're going to like to get your comments, and we would like to answer also questions as we go. So definitely respond and ask. At the end of the webinar, we're going to give you a survey because we're interested to find out your feedback. And on that survey, we are also going to have a box for a free consultation with either myself, Mark, or Brandy. So go ahead if you would like to schedule a consultation, go ahead and check that box. And with that, I'm going to start with introductions. So my name is Klevit. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Business Success Consulting Group, and we specialize in process improvement and in systems and basically organizing businesses so they're more successful. Brandy?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. I am Brandy Henry, engaging on social media, and I truly enjoy helping business owners do their own social media because you can if you give it the time. And my focus today will be on analyzing your message, analytics, and I'm excited to help you.
Excellent.
Help improve your message.
Excellent. Mark?
Hey guys, I'm Mark Savage with Cornerstone Web Studio. I'm going to be focusing mainly today on how to write great headlines and how to make sure you convert online traffic into offline customers by reading the content that you guys are posting.
Excellent. So why are we here? So I'm sure that each one of you got affected in some way by the COVID-19 situation. And the question is, how can we emerge strong out of this situation? And how can we get more customers, more clients, and how can we retain the ones that we have? So this is what we're here to answer. Our objective is that you walk out of this webinar with specific tools that you can apply today in order to improve your messaging and your communication to prospects or existing clients. And why us? Why are we doing this webinar? Is because between us, we have many years of experience working with small, medium-sized businesses, helping them whether with communication, marketing, or improving and organizing their businesses. And today's agenda, we're going to start with Mark, and he's going to talk about messaging that converts. And then Brandy is going to talk about analyzing and massaging your message. And then I'm going to talk about systematizing your company or your organization in order to be able to execute the strategy. And then we're going to have some time for questions and answers. And we're going to let you know how you can work with us. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mark. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll have Mark share his.
All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and get started here. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. Adi, how's that look? Can you see the line big and bold?
Yes.
All right, great. Well, guys, let's jump right into it. I mean, I think the first thing that we have to do when we talk about messaging is just give ourselves a little bit of grace. I mean, let's face it, we were not writers, not all of us anyway, when we graduated or got into business. And here you are now with the digital platform, and with one post, one tweet, you can reach hundreds of clients, whether they're in your current client base or hundreds of potential clients. And so you now have the the platform to turn yourself into a writer. And what happens to a lot of business owners that I know, their message looks exactly like this screen does right here, right? They just don't do anything at all, whether they're worried that their message doesn't matter or whether they're worried that they're not going to write a good one. They just simply freeze and don't do anything. So if I can give you any piece of advice, I would say send out something. All right. So this is really where your strategy and your authenticity meet. So there's no one better to do the messaging for your company than for you. So let's jump right into it, and I'll see if I can't help you get give you some tips and tricks on how to write intriguing headlines that people will actually click on to engage with your business. All right, so one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to give you a little bit of grace. The one thing I hear is I didn't get a lot of comments on this post, or I didn't get a lot of people on my blog. Guys, you should be looking at spending almost the same amount of time on the headline, on those 6 to 8 words, because those 6 to 8 magical words are what are going to actually get people to click on your content and read through that. Just to give you guys a quick stat, 8 out of 10 people surveyed said they would read your headline, but only 2 out of 10 people said that they would continue to read your copy. So keep in mind when you're writing a blog article or anything, that headline is just as important as the copy itself. So when it comes to writing headlines, that's what we're going to focus on right now. I want you to do this. Focus on stating a problem and then offering a solution. The best way to do this is through a headline and a subheadline. So use that big, bold headline of yours to focus on the problem, and then use the subheadline to focus on the solution that they'll find, say, on your webinar or inside the blog post. Now, keep in mind, you're never, ever, ever going to write a headline that appeals to every single person in your audience. So this is one of those things where it's not a zero-sum game. You will succeed every single time you post something, and you will fail every single time you post something. So it's totally okay. What you need to be looking at, though, is A/B testing. So come up with multiple headlines. For instance, as a web designer, one of the ways that we do this is we actually write multiple headlines on home pages, and then we code into the JavaScript. I know I went nerd on you. But we actually code for our clients different headlines. So every other visitor that comes to their website will see a different headline, and we can actually track conversion rates to see which one works best. So I definitely recommend reaching out to maybe your web designer if that's something that you don't already have incorporated on your website. The other thing that we do is then we, like I said, when we A/B test, we track those conversion rates so that we can really dial in the messaging. Again, it's not about succeeding 100% of the time. Messaging is about failing less. Right? You want to get as many people in your audience to resonate with your content as absolutely possible. So moving on, just to give you a quick tip here, if you do have problems, you're not a writer at heart, you can use what we call a headline generator. So this Portent.com tool is pretty cool. I got the link. I spelled it out there for you guys. You can write it down real quick. And this is also going to get sent out to you in a recording. But if you click this link, or type it into your browser, you'll find that you can actually just type in some keywords and it'll generate some headlines for you. Now, it's probably not the one that you're going to end up going with and sending out to your audience. So don't get me wrong. This isn't like a one-stop shop for just free headlines, but it will definitely give you guys some great ideas so that you can get started. A couple other quick tips here. A lot of times when we're writing stuff, we're putting our heart, soul into it. It's taking a long time because we're not writers at heart. And then you get it up there. Keep in mind that what you said in 2018 is probably still pretty relevant to the business in 2020. If that's the case, I highly recommend go back to that old blog post, pull it up, go back to that old webinar content, pull it up and put 2020 on it and go through and just change the relevant, make it updated for the new year if that's the case needs to be. But nobody's going to click on your blog from 2018. If all it needs is just a quick refresh to say 2020, now they could possibly read it again. The other thing I would recommend is don't use common numbers. So it's very often you're going to see like, hey, 5 great tips or 10 reasons why. If you only have 7 reasons why, don't come up with 3 more just to get to 10. Use 7 tips. In fact, there are studies that show Google actually will rank up blog posts that have unique numbers on them, like 13 ways, because they know that each of those ways, I mean, I guess they're making an inference, right? But they're thinking, hey, if they only came up with 13 and all 13 are great, that's awesome. But we would rather them do that than try to get 2 more and make it an even number. Now I'll roll through these real quick, but I just want to give you a few other things to think about when writing headlines. Avoid clickbait. Guys, everybody's caught on and we all decided as a group, we hate it. So this is not working anymore. You don't want to give your company a bad name. Make sure your headline aligns with the content. There's nothing worse than writing an article and the headline was great, but it doesn't really relate to the content and they feel bamboozled. Again, it kind of relates back to that clickbait, doesn't it? Hint at something interesting. Like if, pull out something from the article, like this device is a game changer for waking up refreshed. Not telling them what it is. We get intrigued, and as human beings, we want answers. So we're more likely to read your content. Use statistics. Like doing this will boost your customer base by 192%, or staging your home will sell your house 15 times faster, right? So come up with a stat from your industry. This is a big one. We were talking about this before the call. When you create pieces of content, keep in mind that you have different audiences. So if you know how those audiences break down, they shouldn't all be receiving the same pieces of content. So if you know that you have to relate to this audience of 300 people differently than these 300 people, then write 2 different versions of the same content that will relate to those 2 different people. A great example of this would be like, for me as a marketing company, we have a lot of doctors and we have a lot of tradespeople. So I'm not going to use the words patients for our HVAC clients, but we have a lot of them. So I'm going to use customers for them, right? And then I'll take that same piece of content and send it out to our doctors, and I'll use patients so that it applies specifically to them. Okay, cool. So I wanted to jump on my screen real quick. So bear with me here. I'm going to share something else. Let's see here. For the first time, I thought, you know what, we're a graphic design company. Let's run through some graphic design, right? So hopefully you guys can see this. Adi, can you give me the old head nod? Everything's good? You can see the infographic?
Yes,
All
we're
right.
all good.
Oh, good. All right. Just make sure I didn't start rolling through a blank white screen. So guys, this is just a fun way to present the same kind of information to you, but I wanted to give you a couple of quick stats. So like I said, 8 out of 10 people will actually read your headline, whereas only 2 out of 10, or yes, for you math whizzes out there, 1 out of 5 people will actually read the rest. So I think a writer should actually get ready to spend at least half of the entire time it takes to write the whole piece of content on the headline. Otherwise, what's the point of writing it in the first place? As an SEO guy, I wanted to include this. Keep in mind, everything that you click on in Google results is a title. That title can only be 65 characters wide. So make sure you're getting, you know, you're squeezing out the maximum juice in 65 characters. Don't make the mistake of writing 150 because we won't be able to see, you know, that other 85 characters. In my research, I found the perfect length for a headline is actually only 6 words. So here's an example. Is planning meals good or bad, right? So again, we're falling back on that stat of use content that's intriguing. Like, I'm not telling you whether planning a meal is good or bad. You have to read the article to find out. These are really interesting stats. As you guys all know, and we all like to joke about, even though we're joking about ourselves, we have the attention of goldfish these days. So people will scan headlines, but really they take in about the first word and the last 3 words. It's sad, but it's true. When it comes to your headlines, you want to make them as effective as absolutely possible. The real thing that you want to do here is create something that's attention grabbing and speaks directly to the reader. This goes back to what I told you a minute ago. You cannot do this. It's impossible to do this unless you know your audience. So make sure before you start writing any content or before you start writing any headline, you really think, who are you going to send this to and how will it resonate best with them? And then of course, pull out the old thesaurus, guys. Now's not the time to use the word fun or good. You want to get creative with your adjectives, right? And create something that really sounds fun to read and gives you that authority as a writer, even if you don't consider yourself one. Now, here's one that I struggle with a lot because for me, I like good stuff. And I can't fight this stat. It's been around forever since I got into marketing 15, 18 years ago now. So what I've always been taught and what's always been true is that fear of loss always generates more than hope of gain. So if you're going to use keywords, using negative keywords will tap into somebody's insecurities and they are more likely to read it. Now, this again goes to your culture and your authenticity and your messaging. So some people just say, I understand that might be true, but I'm going to have positive messaging in all of my branding. And that's fine. But
Mark, or maybe you're going to, there is a question, actually, somebody asked, like, if you can give examples of a negative, like what would be a negative headline?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, funny enough, that's coming up.
Okay, good.
So in this big red box, it says, hey, before your next exercise session, stop. Read these tips. It could save you from injury, right? So that is technically using a negative word, stop. Now, other negative words might be like no or without, right? So
are mistake, like, you know, if you say like mistakes to avoid, would that be a negative word?
Exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
You're tapping into somebody's insecurity that without your answer, they may be in trouble, right? Or they may be doing it wrong. instead of reinforcement, like saying, hey, good job on the push-ups, do 25 more, click here for the right technique. You're saying don't do another push-up until you read this article to make sure you're doing it right.
Good. Thank you for answering. Yeah, that's Jen. If that answers your question, you can write me in the Q&A that you did, but thank you, Mark.
No problem. And I know it's hard to talk about headlines because we're all speaking to different audiences. So hopefully this is generic enough to kind of have you guys massage it into your audience. So the next thing is, of course, use numbers. There have been some huge studies that show if you, well, let me say it this way. You ever go online and you notice that every other article is like 15 tips, 7 different ways? There is a reason for that. Articles with numbers in them are clicked on 68% more likely than articles that don't have numbers in them. I don't know if that's because we don't like to read, and so we're like, hey, 5 tips, I can digest that. That's okay. I don't know exactly what the psychology is behind that, but I know that it works. So if you can come up with it, here's another example, like 10 things to do in Santa Monica, right? Now, one quick thing, and then we'll get to the formula, and the formula is really what you want. But this one is kind of my personal favorite, so I'm kind of saving the best for last. I like to personalize my headlines. So for instance, if I'm going to write an article that has 10 tips, or in this case, I give you the example of like 15 ways to study for a test. Number 9 is a must, or number 9 is my favorite. And then all of a sudden the article becomes a little bit more intriguing, even though it's a little bit more benign, right? Like studying for a test, how do you pull out something that's really intriguing about that? But if I tell you that number 9 is my favorite, well, you're more likely to click on my article and at least scroll to number 9. But then you want to figure out, well, is number 9 your favorite? And the only way to do that is to read the other 14. So you start to create this kind of desire to figure this out for yourself. And that's exactly what you want to do. I think we put in here, it intensifies, the reader's curiosity. So here's your formula for getting all of this right. And this is really what you're after here. You're going to have a number, right? Which I would recommend, or a trigger word. You're going to have an adjective. Remember, we have a cheat sheet for that a little bit up here. So like effortless or unique versus good or fun. And then you're going to have your keyword, and then you're going to have your promise. So let's do some funny examples here, right? So one would be like how to bathe an elephant. My 5-year-old is extremely into elephants right now, so I thought this would be appropriate. After the formula, you've got 18 unbelievable ways that you can bathe an elephant indoors right now. That's right. I don't know if you know that, but if you want to click on that article, I will tell you 18 unbelievable ways you can bathe an elephant indoors, not outdoors, indoors. And then, of course, we'll get back to reality a little bit. How to sell your house, right? Well, I know a lot of realtors, and trust me, that exact headline is on their blog right now. How to sell your house in West Lynn, how to sell your house in Oregon City. Well, after our formula, it would be how you can effortlessly sell your house in less than 24 hours. Because after all, we want to sell the house, but the hook, the promise is that I will help you do it in less than 24 hours. And of course, that gets them curious. What are they doing that I might not be doing? And now they're perusing the article. And just to talk negative real quick before we jump off, this one goes out to Brandy because I know she loves this kind of stuff. Why do headlines fail? Well, here's 3 reasons why they fail. One is that the headline doesn't match at all the article. Maybe you came up with a really good headline, but because you were spending as much time on that as you were the article, you forgot about what you wrote, and they don't meet. Another one is huge, guys. They're just not specific. Keep in mind, you're the one writing the article. You know everything that's in the article. We don't. So you need to make sure that, and this is an easy test, by the way, just simply send the headline to somebody else and say, hey, you like this headline? What do you think the article would be about? And if they guess completely wrong, well, then you've really failed, and it's time to go back to the drawing board so that you can be more specific and they know exactly what the article is about. And of course, here's one of the funny ones. Words can mean a lot of different things. So let's be very careful about the words you use. And here's my example. Police begin campaign to run down jaywalkers. Anyway, Brandy, that one was for you. I know you love that stuff. So guys, hopefully that'll help you write great headlines, avoid writing headlines that fail, and really start to write things that get clicked on, get attention, and then that audience becomes offline customers to help you grow your business. Adi, that's all I got for you. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me for 15 minutes. I hope that helps.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we're going to move it over to Brandy, who is actually going to tell us how to massage the message. So Brandy, over to you.
Thank you, Adi. Here we go. All right. I would rather us be in presentation view, not a countdown view. Well, this might be what we get. Okay. So assessing your message. What does that mean? What does it mean to assess your message? Well, it's important. And that's what we're going to talk about. We want to know if we're getting through to our audience and how our audience is responding to us or not responding to us. It's helpful for us to understand how we're coming across. So what I'm going to talk about today are tools for assessment. And specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about analytics. We're going to talk about A/B testing. And we're going to talk about ask your audience. And we'll go into some examples with each. So those are our 3 areas, and we'll recap toward the end. So analytics. How do we know what's resonating with our audience? And then we hear this word thrown about, analytics. Where there's kind of a range of analytics. So the soft analytics, hard analytics, and I would say replies to calls and action are kind of a gray area. They're in the middle. And why are these things important? Because they can help us understand what's coming across well and maybe what isn't. What are soft versus hard analytics? So soft analytics, all of us like to get hearts on various platforms. That's a soft analytic. It feels good, but it might not pay the rent. What about comments? Those are important too. And we always want to answer all those comments. Responses to questions you might pose. That's important too, because that's saying that people are engaging with your content, with your question. And then replies to calls to action. So if your call to action is, hey, give me a call or click on my website or sign up for this webinar, that's a reply to a call to action. And that's also helping you understand how you're messaging and how what you have to say is coming across. Now, let's get into what pays the rent. Hard analytics, clicks. We want to know how many people really clicked to leave a platform and go into our world, our website, or our podcast, or our whatever it is that drives people to engage deeper with us and our business and what we have to offer. Maybe even sign up for a free consultation. Purchases, those are fantastic hard analytics. Views. So views can be how many people quite literally paused and watched our video. This is a trickier one because Facebook, Instagram, they count it based on 3 seconds. We wish, we could go a little deeper about that, but it does matter that people are pausing to view what it is we're putting up. And open rates. If you send email, you're probably very familiar with the term open rate. I do believe that your open rate is very important. It shows if you're resonating with your audience. It shows if they're engaged with what you have to send. And that's important. I'm pretty proud of my open rate. I'm in the 50%. And I love that. And I try my best to continue to speak to my audience in a consistent way that's helpful and engaging. Also, if people unsubscribe, that's okay because they're just not your people. So remember those open rates, that's referring to emails, and that is important.
Brandy, I have a question here. Somebody asked a question on the Q&A. What is the typical, or what is the range? Actually, the actual question is, what is the range of good open rates? So I'm thinking about what is the typical, because if you can give us a range or a typical, because 50% is very, very good, right? Mine is about a 20%, but it's.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So one of the things that tends to happen as your audience grows is some of those analytics might seem like they're getting worse.
Right.
Well, they're not. Adi has a list that's maybe 5 or 6 times the size of mine. And so her 25% is actually more opens than my 51.7% or whatever it is that I'm grinning about. And so that is a factor. Right. And also, does your open rate serve your goals? Right? So if you're finding that your open rate is allowing you maybe to cruise the world at 10% open rate, fantastic. If you're not reaching your goals based on your open rate, then yeah, you need to assess that and see what's going on.
Thank you.
Yes. And I wanted to talk a little platform specific. So analytics is a general and broad term. Every platform has its own way of being kind of a synonym for the word analytic. On Instagram, they call it view insights. If you have a business account on Instagram, below every single one of your posts says view insights, and you can go in and see likes, hearts, actions taken, all of that. You can also go into your insights through your profile and get a deeper understanding of your audience, of when your audience tends to be on, Instagram and when they tend to open them, and look at your content, who's actually going to your website. That's a super important analytic. We really want to see who it is how you're doing getting people to leave a platform and go to your website. And then how about LinkedIn? LinkedIn likes to call them reactions. What about Facebook? Well, Facebook loves, as you can tell, to have lots of names for lots of things. Facebook audience page views and, audience insights and page insights. So when we're talking analytics, we're talking the same thing often, even if we're using slightly different words per platform. So it's kind of like going to different restaurants, and essentially we're asking for the same thing, but they might use a different name for that same plate or that same order. All right. Be sure to put more questions in as they come to you.
Oh, I was just going to comment on the same thing. It's like you go to Starbucks and they call it grande, where
Yes.
you're going to go somewhere else and they will call it just a regular cup of coffee.
Exactly. All right. So A/B testing. And here's where we're going to get a little geeky with some marketing and some analysis. So with email, if you have, for example, a subscription platform that allows you to do this, it will allow you to do what's called A/B testing. And that is where the same email goes out with two different headlines. And the system or your platform is paying attention to which headline is getting opened more within a set amount of time. And whichever one wins, everybody else gets that same one, which is a pretty cool tool. Now, what about a little bit more A/B testing? For this webinar, we're able to generate many, many different links. So we can tell from Mark's email who signed up, from Adi's email who signed up, from my email who signed up, from the LinkedIn posts who signed up, from Facebook who signed up, etc. So that becomes like A, B, C, D, E, F, G testing, where you can go back and really get a good understanding of who is signing up from what platform. And probably on each platform, you could go even deeper. So on LinkedIn, we could put up two different but same information, but different headlines for our webinar, and take a look and see which one drove more people by having different links. And we could have an A/B test just for LinkedIn.
So there is a question, Brandy, if you're ready. So the question is, which email marketing platform do you recommend that will have that A/B testing?
I would, your email. I use ConvertKit. I certainly don't know every single email platform out there. I do know that MailChimp and I did not get along, so I moved on. But ConvertKit and I get along really well, and I can do A/B testing there. Do I always do that? No. But I know that it's available to me, and if I want to test, whenever I do want to test, I can use it for that, which I appreciate.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So what's a more casual way for A/B testing? Say you're on Instagram, go back to all your posts, see which ones kind of did the best. Look at your analytics, see which ones had the most interest from people. Go back to your emails, which ones were open the most. Go to your signups, which ones had the most signups. And we might not be able to take that to a statistician and satisfy him or her, but you can tell which posts, which, emails, etc., did better than others. And then you can go back and decide if you want to reuse that same content or that same wording. And that's entirely up to you, for you to analyze for your audience. All right, so that's a more casual, at least go back. We want to go a little deeper than just which one felt like it did better. We want to go a little deeper than that by looking at those analytics, whether it's the insights or page views or reactions. So get a little bit better or deeper than just what felt like it did better, but go a little deeper into what maybe got more people to click to your website, even if it wasn't totally delivered as an A/B post. All right, we're going to move on to that from there. Okay, my favorite, ask your audience. Ask them, is this serving your needs? Ask them what they would like from you. If you have a Facebook group, people that have specifically jumped in to have more care from you and more information from you, and other people in their same boat as they are, ask them, what would they like from you? You can even give them, 4 choices. Let D be other, and be specific. We tend to not always answer open-ended questions as well as we might answer, please choose one of the following, or all 4 of the following, or which ones apply to you, and leave one of those as open-ended by saying other. I recently did this with my email list, and I got fantastic feedback. It was super helpful to help me know what they need from me, or what they could use, or how I could come across a little better. What can I do to serve people who are already in my world better? Because we want to keep, part of that business success in the long run and coming out stronger is to keep those clients, to keep those people with you through this time while you're paralleling finding new. So ask those people. They're very likely to give you information that'll help you find those new people too. Because these people already like you. So likely those new people are going to be similar to your current audience. All right. So ask them straight up, what would you like? Just like after this webinar, we're going to send you a survey and we're going to ask you, what did you think? Did you like this? Did you like that? And don't worry, you're all getting the same survey. There's no A/B testing happening there. Sorry, maybe a little nerdy about that. All right, so we're going to recap. Analytics, hard and soft. Looking at those numbers, those clicks, those open rates, remembering that every platform has its own lingo. I wouldn't be surprised if anyway, that lingo can change even regionally, but whatever with that one. Just know that analytics are the broad terms. Instagram, it's insights, reactions on LinkedIn, open rates for your email. And of course, you can go deeper with email analytics. Then you can tag for different things, and it gets it gets what I call fun, but maybe it's not as fun. All right, so A/B testing. And that's where we're like, this one or that one. You send them both out, see which one got the best or the most reactions that you were looking for. And remember, A/B testing can be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and on testing, where you're really going deep. Which ones, which headline really grabbed more people on this platform? Which headline grabbed more people on that platform? Or which headline got people to open my email? So lots of fun can be had there. And then ask. That's a great way to assess how your messaging is coming across. I kind of figure for every one person who answers represents about 5 other people. And that is super helpful for me to understand how I could be serving my audience, what I call my peeps, as best as possible during this time and moving forward. All right, so that's my little spiel. I'm going to now hand it back to Adi.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brandy. All right, so we just heard from 2 experts in the industry. As you can see, they're just like expert, both Mark and Brandy. And now you know how to pivot your message, how to use the A/B testing. So hopefully you got really good tools that you can apply right now. And I am going to go over now the last part of the presentation. And Brandy, can you tell me if you can see the screen where it says why processes? Yeah, okay, great. So the last part here of the presentation is why processes. And the reason why we kept it for last is because now you have the data, the knowledge of how to do the messaging, how to massage the messaging, and now we have to implement it. So that's where processes and procedures come handy. So why processes? As you can see here, the first thing is uniformity. So you want, first of all, it's uniformity within your own actions and the actions of your team members. So let's say, for instance, you are, every time you are going to create a new message, a new marketing piece, you want to make sure that you're actually following the same sequence of actions, and that's where processes come into play. The second part is training. So you bring on a new team member, you're onboarding somebody, and you want to make sure that you're training them on your best practices, on your processes, and that's why you need to have well-documented processes and procedures. And then accountability. You want to make sure that that all those tasks are being followed with, that you have a follow through with those tasks. And that's how, if you have them documented, you have checklists, you have specific processes and procedures, you can also make sure that it's accountability for yourself and accountability for your team. And an analysis of what works. You heard both Mark and Brandy talk about it. When you actually have a well-documented process, then you can see, and you're doing it uniformly every single time, then you know that the variable will be with the results or the headline, and not necessarily the variable is not within the actions that you're introducing, right? Because let's say I build one piece one way, and then I created another one, but I didn't follow with the same actions. So then you're entering variables there that are not necessarily controlled. But if you're doing the same thing every single time, then you will be able to see what works. And lastly, retain knowledge. I'm sure you all experienced during COVID-19, you either lost customers, lost clients, had to lay off employees, different change occurred. And with that change, you have also the knowledge of what was working before, or the knowledge of somebody that was doing a certain task or a certain job that basically you had to lay them off, or you're not in contact with them anymore, or it got forgotten in these 2 months that they were not doing their job. So when you have well-documented processes and procedures, that risk also goes away, because you have your knowledge, you have the legacy, you have your business documented, so it can continue no matter what happens. And my advice to you in terms of like what to do with this data is to write your processes and procedures. So you heard today from both Mark and Brandy on how to create those marketing pieces that work, how to engage better on social media, how to send your email marketing, have a process, a very specific process for each one of them. And if you need any tips on how to do that, feel free to schedule a free consultation. I'll be happy to walk you through how to start, where to start, because it's important that you document it correctly, but that you also use it as a tool with your team members to be able to implement it and repeat it constantly. Okay, yes, Brandy.
Yeah, so a question came in.
Yes.
Where's a good place to document, I think is what the person is asking, like paper, pen, Google Docs, like a list, what works best? Or what have you seen work best, I think is what the person is asking.
Yes, so what I've seen work best is an online platforms that you can use in order to document processes and procedures when you have a large team. The reason being is that before COVID-19, it might not have been such a big problem, but now that people work from home or you have remote team members, you really have to rely on something that is not paper in your office. And besides, paper is, you can't really keep it up to date, or it's harder to change. But even if you have it in a Word document on your server, it's not as easily accessible as in a place where people can share. So if you don't want to pay for an online platform, which is basically a document management system, you can also use something like Google Docs or even Word Online, where you can actually have that shareable, that it's very easy to access, it's easy to edit, and it's easy to put it in a way that everybody can have access to. So hopefully that answers the question. Okay, good. Well, thank you for that. And our next slide will be right here. So we are time now for more questions and answers. So if you have more questions, please write them in the Q&A box. And we are going to move on to answering those questions. And then in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I am going to put in the chat box, I'm going to okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to put in the chat box, I'm going to put a link to the survey, and please log in there, and I will answer the questions. And if you have any, if you'd like to have a free consultation with any of us, please mark the box. So while I'm doing that, Mark, do we have any questions?
I don't see any in the chat. Let me see if I got any private ones.
I think I see one in the Q&A. Let me just get a...
I wanted to also give a tip. Mark made a good point about a thesaurus. There's a great website that I have as one of my main bookmarks called powerthesaurus.org. And you can go there and put words in and get some great ideas or suggestions for when you feel stuck on those headline words. Especially, those words good, bad. We want to find something more interesting, as he was talking about. So powerthesaurus.org is one of my go-to tools on a regular basis.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Another one, in terms of like how do you actually come up with the headline, right? I mean, that's always a question that comes up in terms of like how do I know it's right? So I know you talk about the A/B testing, but even before that, like when you sit there, and how do you know, oh wow, this is like a good one, right? So I think, Mark, I think you touched on it in terms of like the positive, the negative, etc. Having 6 words in the message, that's a good one, but it has to be specific. Wouldn't you say, like it has to be specific to the topic you're going to talk about? If you're going to talk about sales, you should definitely talk about that you are going to have in the headline that you're talking about a webinar that's about selling, right?
Absolutely. But to the point, if you have multiple audiences and you're talking about how to increase their new customers, and half of your list are doctors, you immediately with one word canceled out half of your list, because doctors aren't looking to get more new customers, they're looking to get more new patients. So
that's right.
Your comment about being very specific, when you talk about milling over 6 to 10 words, you really have no excuse to get that wrong, because it's only 10 words. So and if you feel like there's you're not in a win-win scenario with your whole audience, then just break up the audience and send out half of it to one half and half of it to the other.
That's a very good point. So it's also important to tag your list. You have to be able to separate your list, right? Like, who are your doctors? Who are your clients? That, I mean, because there are businesses that will call they're calling them clients, and there are businesses that are calling them customers, right? So if you have a headline which says how to sell to your customers, but you also want to bring, like, let's say professional services that call them clients, it's not going to resonate, right?
Right. And the other thing we have to keep in mind too, I know one of the participants on the call is Remy, and he owns a 503 Tires, which is a mobile tire shop. So I love the concept, right? I went to go get tires on my car when I sold it to a friend of mine, and I literally sat there for 3.5 hours. So his concept is, for a small service fee, I actually drive the truck to your house. I change the tires right in your driveway. You just sit inside and watch whatever episode of CSI you want to watch, right? But for him, being maybe new to email marketing or new to social media, there is definitely some, I don't want to call it a learning curve, but you definitely got to start throwing things out that you think logically will resonate with the audience. And then I would actually have a planned strategy to diversify. So maybe one of them is giving an incentive, and then one of them is focusing on the value. So maybe one of them is a deal, one of them is a convenience factor, right? And then see which resonates better, right, and start to formulate that strategy.
That's a great advice. Excellent advice. And I think with that, I don't see any more questions. I think it was the questions that we had. So I'm going to put now a slide on the screen to just give you all the information if you'd like to reach us. So let me just get to that slide. All right, good. Thank you all for your wonderful patience while we are navigating throughout the screens here. So here we go. So this is our contact information. If you'd like to reach any of us, there you go. We're here to help. We're here to answer any questions that you might have. And I hope you enjoyed that webinar. This webinar, we also have the recording available. So if you'd like it, you can reach out to us and we'll send it to you. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for participating, and we will see you in our next webinar.
Bye, everybody.